Hello, everyone, in the summer distance education class on Jesus and the Gospels. I'm Edward Sri. It's good to be with you. I want to thank you for being a part of this class and journeying with me and Professor Akers through the Gospels and the life of Jesus. I pray it's been a blessing for you. I know summer sessions are always a little packed and the schedule is always just a little bit different. And so I just appreciate all of you who were the go-getters and you decided to take a summer class this summer. I know even some of you have taken a summer class and did an intensive class on top of it. So God bless you for your desire to really go after it in your studies. And I pray that these Gospels, the life of Jesus, has been a blessing for you to study and is written on your hearts and will bear fruit in the people you serve in the years moving forward. We're going to do a little review session. This is going to be very brief, a very simple video here. I'm just recording on my own personal computer here just to get you something in response to the questions a number of you have submitted to me either on Canvas or via email. So first of all, just a word about the exam itself. Inevitably, this always happens when people take an exam, something goes wrong. They can't download the exam, or they opened up the exam too soon on accident, or they lost track of time. Something went wrong. If there's any little technical issue, logistical issue, just please do not cause yourself any stress about that. We're very understanding. I certainly am as a professor. We're going to totally work with you. Let's say you get on. I know we've had a couple technical issues already with Canvas this summer, and let's say you get on and you can't submit the exam, or something goes wrong. We'll work with you. You can always email me if there's any problems. You can email me the exam if you're not able to get it up on Canvas for some reason. I think you all have my personal email address. It's just my last name, SRI, so sri.ted. TED, so sri.ted@gmail.com. That's the best way to reach me, and just put summer class exam or Gospels class, that is. Put Gospels class exam. That would be great, and then we'll be able to get back to you and solve whatever issues may come up. That's the last thing I want you worrying about, are technical, logistical things. I just want you freed up to pour your heart and mind into the life of Jesus through Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Let your attentions go there. Let's turn then to a couple questions that have come up, and there were different people that had similar questions, so I'll combine them here a bit. Some questions were about the big picture timeline a number of people had, and I'll just say a few words there. Again, I would say no stress on this one. Just really do not spend a lot of time on the exam with this. If you just know the key event, the name of that event, like Transfiguration or Parables, and you can give the chapter in Matthew's Gospel, Matthew 17, Matthew 13, respectively there, for example. If you could do that, and then maybe just one sentence explaining why is that event significant? How does it fit into the larger picture? What was most important about it? Just one sentence, really. So you don't need to write an essay on each one of these points. I'm sharing this because there's some students in years past spent a lot of time on this, and then they didn't have as much time to develop the other essays. So you should be able to do this part of the exam pretty quickly, and you can just, as you're typing it in, you can just type vertically, down. Just put, say, I'll just use that example, Matthew 5 through 7. Sermon on the Mount, and then you write your sentence about it. Then you could just put the next line, Matthew 8 through 9, healings, and then your sentence about the significance of healing. So really quick, like that, just straight down, bullet point fashion is fine. Just demonstrate that the timeline. That's my greatest hope, that you all come away being able to connect those dots in the ministry of Jesus. Another question came up about are you have to put the whole timeline in, or is it just going to be part of the timeline? And that all just depends from year to year. I kind of change that around, and you'll have to wait and see when you open it up. You may get just part of the timeline. In other words, I may say, tell me about the baptism of Jesus to the choosing of the 12 apostles. Or I may say, tell me about the choosing of the 12 apostles to the transfiguration. Or I may tell me about the giving the Peter's confession of faith to the temple action. So I may kind of just vary it up in parts, or I may give you the whole thing. And if you get the whole thing, you obviously spend a little more time than if you just got the part. But whether you get a portion of the timeline, or you're told to give the whole broad stroke, the key is just chapter number, the name of that event, and then a sentence explaining its significance. Why is this event so important? Please don't think of this as writing a whole long essay. That's not what this is about. All right, so I hope that helps to answer about the timeline questions. A couple other questions that have come up, just on maybe the study guide as a whole. This is just, as you can tell, I'm just walking through what we covered in class with special attention given from the baptism to Christ, and then the sections on the Gospel of John. So questions that may come up there. You'll just get one of the main passages that are mentioned there, and really, I would just want you to zoom in on just the mountain peak points. You do not need to give a line-by-line explanation of the entire scene of the wedding at Cana, or the dialogue with Nicodemus, or the woman at the well, or the blind man story, or the woman caught an adult. It's just going to be, you'll get like, what's the main, like the really big, couple mountain peaks that are in there. That's what you want to focus on. Don't worry about the every line by line, every detail in the Gospel of John. Really just the main mountain peaks. So that's going to be part up to you of discerning what those main mountain peaks are. Yeah, it'll be pretty easy. In one hand, if you just saw the professor spend a lot of time on that, that's a good indication that that's something to draw attention to. But then also, just as you're going through the notes, realizing, all right, if I had to teach this, I see this is the main, this is the meat here. This is like one of the key points. So it's going to be a little bit up to you in the art of discerning what are the main mountain peaks. But I just want to assure you, you do not need to come in and give a line by line analysis every verse. No, it's just the main mountain peaks in each of those main passages. So that's on the Gospel of John. Another question came up just in general about the study guide as a whole, that these are the kinds of topics that you would have to prepare. Does that mean there's a whole bunch of other topics there? All I'm saying there is you might not get the exact question that's stated in the study guide, but everything's going to be based off of what's there in the study guide. So you don't need to go do a lot of additional research and study. It's just you follow the study guide. You're gonna be really good to go. It just might, the question that appears on the exam may not be the exact wording, so I may zoom in on a particular point in there. So but if you know the study guide, you're gonna just be great. And I'll say this, and I think you've heard me from the classes in the fall, or from the spring semester, that the way I look at exams as, the study guide in some hands, it's long, and I understand that. It's challenging to go through that, but the hardest part is what you're doing now in the prep work. When you open up that exam and you actually take it, if you did the prep work well, you're going to just go, wow, oh, this is a piece of cake. This is easy. And you're just going to feel great about it. And you'll see the exam will be really easy if you went through the study guide. If you don't go through the study guide thoroughly and you're not prepared, then you might have a little stress. But the hard part is what you're doing now in the prep. But I think if you go through that study guide, you're going to walk into this exam confident, and you'll be able to nail the exam. That's my sense. And I said this to the students in the spring semester, is really view this exam and going through the study guide as not just I'm doing this so I can pass this test and get a good grade. I mean, I hope those things happen too, but really do this for yourself. Realize that you may teach this one day at an RCA class or a youth ministry or for a Bible study or to your own kids, and if you had to walk through the life of Jesus and draw the main themes in these passages in the Gospel of John, look at this as a chance for you to study this well, so it kind of like comes into your own soul, and you organize it in your way. You go through and take notes so that you have those notes with you for years to come if you ever have to teach about the life of Jesus. And chances are, no matter what you're doing in ministry, you're probably going to end up at some point teaching part of the life of Jesus, right? Because our Catholic faith is all centered on Christ. So I hope this will be helpful for you. So think of it that way. Don't just do this to get the grade. Do this to prepare yourself for the future people God's entrusting to you, that you can walk them through the life of Jesus. Now, a couple other questions that came up. A few people asked questions about the historical sections. I know that was an area where a number of people asked questions about. Some questions came up about the Hasmonean dynasty. Some people were wondering, do I need to know all the dates? No, you don't need to know all the dates. I think you want to situate it in general. 167 BC is a big date. That's when Antiochus Epiphanes comes and desecrates the temple. That's a key. That 164, 167 period of persecution. If you know the middle of the 2nd century, BC, I think that's fine. I'm really not worried about precise dates in this area. I just want you to think this is after Christ. I don't want you to think it's 1,000 years before Christ. If you can situate this middle of the 2nd century BC, you're great. That's all you need to know in terms of the dates. As far as what you need to know about the Hasmoneans, I don't think, somebody asked, do I need to go do some extra reading? Should I go read some more from what we did? And, you could go back if you want and read some things from the Marcus Borg article I gave you on the kind of social situation. There'd be a couple references back to the period of the Hasmoneans in passing he makes. There's the piece from that book called In the Shadow of the Temple that would give a little more some of that historical background. You could look at some of those things, but really, if you took good notes on that day, if you want to just re-watch that section, you would really be able to trace from Mattathias down to the time of Jesus pretty easily. And you don't need to know every single Hasmonean ruler. I think I would want to know who Mattathias is, the founder of the Maccabean revolt, the father of all those sons that led the rebellion. I think I'd want to know about Jonathan and how Mattathias and Jonathan, their spiritual vision for this, that this was all about zeal for the Torah. It's about trusting in God, prayer. They give thanksgiving. It's all about a spiritual, they're trusting in God to deliver them. But what you start seeing happening in some of the brothers like Jonathan, Simon, and others, that you see that they're starting to make alliances and taking on titles from the Gentile rulers over them, and they're getting some personal advantage from that, and that's problematic, especially as they take the title high priest. I think that's a significant point, that they start taking the title high priest, because remember, while they are from a priestly family, they're not from the line of Aaron, and so they are usurping the high priestly line for themselves, and that's seriously problematic. One key turning point I would want you to make sure you draw attention to, and if you don't remember this would be worth going back to your notes, and if your notes are fuzzy, you may just want to watch this portion of the lecture. It'll only be about 5-10 minutes to look at, but it's when we talk about John Hyrcanus the First. John Hyrcanus the First is a key kind of watershed moment there. This is when it seems to be that this is where a lot of the splintering in Judaism really starts to take off, where John Hyrcanus is confronted. First of all, he not only takes the title high priest, he actually starts minting coins. That's significant. To mint coins is a royal action. He's now claiming some kind of royal authority, and he's certainly not from the line of David. So this is doubly problematic, taking the high priesthood and now doing this royal action. There's an account of the Pharisees going to John Hyrcanus and then saying, hey, basically we'll follow you if you give up the high priestly authority, and we'll follow your leadership. But he wasn't willing to do that. And at that, the Pharisees, who it's believed to be, they were originally aligned with the Maccabean revolt, the Hasmonean family, but now, as a result of this corruption in their family, summed up in John Hyrcanus now, they say no more, and they break off from their support, whereas those that remained loyal to the Hasmoneans are the Sadducees. So I think that's an important turning point. And you can also see some of the roots and background to the Essenes here, likely in a lot of the documents the Essenes left behind, known as the Dead Sea Scrolls. They mention the wicked priest, that there's this wicked priest that's persecuting them. And if you had to picture out, well, which group in first century Judaism would be upset and feel persecuted by a wicked priest? Like, why would they call this priest wicked? Well, think about it. If you were from the Zadokite line, and all of a sudden you have which is the true high priestly line, and then you see these Hasmoneans taking over the role of high priest, you would view them as a great rival. You would view them as the false priests, the wicked priests. So it's a theory, but I think it's well supported that the Essenes likely come from that kind of a background, a Zadokite background. They were Zadokites or supporters of Zadokites. They're upset with the Hasmoneans for taking the high priesthood. So it gives you a little bit of background of how understanding some of that movement of the Hasmonean dynasty from Mattathias and Judas and their spiritual perspective to the taking of secular and priestly authority with Jonathan, Simon, and all the way to John Hyrcanus. I think that's where you get the beginning of the splintering with the Essenes, Pharisees, and Sadducees. So I just gave you a quick summary there. You could go back and look a little bit more at the lecture on that topic to view that a little bit. Some other questions came up about the national crisis in the first century. Once again, this is a lot related to the Marcus Borg article on the social world of Jesus that I gave you. Basically, Borg is arguing that this is the crisis they're facing, is how do we live as Jews? What does it mean to be a faithful Jew under these oppressive conditions, under the Romans, with all these Gentiles living around us? And there's a lot of tough questions like, do we submit to Roman authority? To what extent do we accept Roman authority? There'd be some Jews saying, well, we have to. They're the rulers. We'll get killed if we don't, or we'll be in trouble if we don't. Then there's others who would say, well, to a certain extent we can, but we don't fully accept them. And then there'd be others that would say we can't accept them all because Deuteronomy 17 says only God is king. And so there's questions about that. You could look at that. There's questions about tithing. Do we pay the tithe and the taxes to Rome? It's hard to pay both. So am I loyal to God, or am I going to be loyal to Caesar? I'm not going to be able to do both. I'm going to have to choose. So that's a religious question. It's also a political question. And then there's the question of assimilation. How much can we interact with the pagans, the Gentiles around us? And again, these aren't just like there's a religious issue and a political issue over here. These are intertwined. Do I accept Roman authority? Do I pay the taxes to Caesar? How much do I interact with the Romans, the Greeks around me? Those are political, economic questions that are very much religious issues for the Jewish people. And there'd be different Jews on different ends of the perspective that would be willing to compromise with the culture around them and more than others. And that's going to be part of the big debate. So we looked at the four major groups in first century Judaism. You'll definitely want to be able to understand those four different groups. It doesn't mean those are the only groups, but those are the ones Josephus singles out. They're the most well known. You'll want to know the Pharisees, Sadducees, Essenes, and the revolutionary movements, understanding their beliefs, their background, why they believe what they believe, so I think that would be an important thing to look at. And you can look at Marcus Borg on that, and you can also look at the lecture we gave on that topic on the very first. That was very early on in the class when we were looking at this historical background. And then we gave application to how would this relate to Jesus's ministry and understanding his healing ministry, understanding the Sermon on the Mount. So I gave examples before we even got to the healing ministry and Sermon on the Mount. I gave examples way back in that lecture on the social world of Jesus, the Hasmonean dynasty there, where then I said, okay, think about it. If we know this background of all these different groups, and now you're one of these groups hearing Jesus talk about the Beatitudes, talking about loving your enemy, talking about being light to the world, how would he be challenging you? We looked at that, and we looked at then, how the ministry of Jesus would be understood in light of that kind of social context world. So don't just look at the Sermon on the Mount and the healing ministry. Go back to the notes and the lectures that we had on the very topic of the social world of Jesus and this historical background, because then we gave some application points there. That would be helpful. Another question that came up was this last one here that I'll look at here is somebody asked a question about the change in Jesus's ministry. There were two ways his ministry changed in response to the opposition he was facing in Galilee, particularly from the Pharisees who were opposing him. So I'd say two things on this. First, there is he changes his teaching method. He starts teaching in parables. That was new, so you want to know why he does that, what are parables used for, and again, to the Old Testament background of how parables were used oftentimes to confront wicked leaders, to draw them into a story and realize they're the bad guy, that kind of thing. And then secondly, what else does Jesus do? He sees that, the Pharisees, the leaders, the popular leaders are opposed to them. Well, then he's got to choose his own leaders. That's when he chooses his 12, and he invests them with his authority to go out and do what he was doing, preaching the gospel of the kingdom and healing every disease and infirmity. He chooses 12 to symbolize that this is the new Israel, the new tribes of Israel. If you want to be the true Israel, you want to follow these men in whom I vested my authority. So, my friends, I hope I covered your questions. I tried to pull together general themes, and I did take a couple particular questions, but then like the general themes that came up from the questions from all of you. I hope this is helpful for you. Please know that I'll be praying for all of you as you prepare for this exam. I ask your prayers for me, and please pray for my family if you could. I always ask for prayers wherever I go for my family life. It's a joy, and it's one not easy to talk about Jesus and his love and the gospel. It's a whole other thing to live it in daily life and in marriage and family life. So if you can remember the three family in your prayers, know that we'll be praying for you and our family rosary as you are doing your exam. May God bless you.